Welcome back to Fiegel Files. I'm your host, Bo Fiegel, the strongest lawyer in Texas. We, each week, bring you the perfect mix of law, life, LSU pride, and strength. And today on the Fiegel Files, we're talking about mind over matter with a mix of mental health, law, healing, some spiritual talk, and my wife's here. So we'll see where this goes. All right. All right. Here's my intro, Rachelle Mellieon. In family law, we talk about evidence, orders, and outcomes. But today we're talking about something that doesn't always reflect well in the court file, mental health. When's it time to get help? What does therapy really look like? And why might taking care of your head be the smartest legal move you can make? My guest today is Rachelle Mellieon, LPC-S, a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and then neuropsychotherapist, I don't know what that means, NPT-C, who's been helping families navigate trauma, communication breakdowns, and daily life over 10 years. She's the CEO and owner of Wellspring Waters Counseling and Wellness, LLC, her very own private practice. Rachelle is an ordained minister and pastor under the senior pastor of Tree Mounts Temple Church and serves the spiritual needs of her members as well as the mental health needs of her clients. As a former teacher and behavioralist, Rachelle brings a background in applied behavioral analysis, helping clients build practical tools for meaningful change. Her approach blends mind and body work, creating a no-judgment zone where compassion and quality care lead the way. Rachelle's here to remind us that getting help isn't a weakness, it's a strategy. Rachelle, welcome to the Fiegel Files.
Thank you for having me.
And last minute, I didn't know, but Rachelle and my wife are friends, and my wife was here eating lunch. She goes, Katie should sit with me, so.
Sounds great.
Hi, love.
I'm here.
My wife of a month and a half. She's made it 45 days, so there we go. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I guess you have to be. No, I'm just kidding.
Not
All right.
at all.
Okay. So, you work with people of all ages, and my first notes here, children, adolescents. Is that true? Okay. So you're both a minister and a therapist. How did you help me with that path?
Yeah, my journey is a little extensive as it relates to ministry and the call. So, it's been a journey.
Where are you from?
Yeah. Here in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
Went to John Jay High School. Go
Really?
Mustangs.
My son is at John Jay.
Really?
He's a swimmer. He's a
Wow.
swim and water polo.
I did not know that.
Just made all district for water polo.
I was a cheerleader there, and then I went to Trinity University for college. So I stayed in town the whole time.
Okay. So Trinity for undergrad?
Yes.
Okay. And so the acronyms that I don't fully understand, LPC-S and NPT-C. Can you explain to me what those
So
are?
in the state of Texas, I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and the S just stands for being able to supervise other therapists in their journey. NPTC is similar letters in an alphabet soup of sorts, just to say that I believe in the mind and body connection. That now that we're learning more since around 2010 with the vagus nerve, that it's not just top-down therapy, as you might think of when you see people on the couch, but it's bottom-up therapy through the body. We talk back to the system and have more interventions. And there's lateral across the hemisphere, bilateral movements as it relates to left and right brain action, like taking a
What does it take to ascertain those two? What are the requirements to get those alphabet soup credentials?
grad school, yeah, and then through one of the few fields where you have to prove yourself and how effective you are before you graduate. So as a student intern, seeing clients, and then once you graduate and take the state exam, then you have to go back and analogous to doctors going through residency, we go through a space. Well, back then it was internship. Now it's LPC associates.
Okay.
And then you go to an LPC supervisor, someone like me.
So the day you graduate high school, how long before you can be credentialed in those areas on a standard track? I know some people accelerate.
After you graduate high school, then
Yeah.
you go to college, you get a bachelor's degree, and then I went to, I got my master's at Webster University in mental health counseling. And then as far as, I guess, specialties and things like that, that happens through residency. So I've worked with hospitals and with the government and group practices and private practice just to kind of get my niche. It's an opportunity where you have to study under people to know what fields
Sure.
or populations you aspire to work towards. And I kind of did too much study, so I've been a bit of everywhere.
Well, thank you for slumming it with me. So yeah, lawyers, we don't have to prove ourselves. We just get the degree and we get a license and we're set. So yeah, I did want to. I think psychiatry therapy, in my mind, they're often a very secular science, a very secular field. Is that an issue to balance someone, with obviously strong faith to the point you, an ordained minister? Is there a difficulty meshing those things for you?
So starting out, I thought there might be, because there's faith-based counselors and there's a secular license. And so through my journey of learning through, yes, I had one mentor. I was at a faith-based school, and the school counselor there, I asked her if she had any recommendations, and she referred me to one of my mentors. At that time, I actually had two mentors come out of that campus, and both one showing me, she works out at the Stone Oak area, how she takes her faith and just applies it where, God allows her, whereas the other clinician actually had a model that's set up that here's my credential, and here's how we incorporate that. So a bit of two extremities, both Christian women, and how they actually can use that, and how that can look. So I got to see you don't necessarily have to stick to one approach that leaves you at the door, but you can invite it to those looking for faith-based to have that approach. And it's really, people think when you come to therapy that it's advice giving, and we're not advice givers. It's about meeting people where they are, and using the training and the tools, not necessarily what I think or my beliefs onto you. That's actually not doing it right.
It'd be a lot more convenient if my therapist would just give me advice of what to do. It'd be a little easier to, it's just, yeah. All right, so someone's in a tough place. I'm gonna actually go out of order in the questions. When is the right time to go to therapy?
I always say counseling for everyone, especially counselors, that everybody would be better off with a therapist in their pocket, like you go to the gym. You want to stop going to the gym once you feel like you're fit, right? Our strongest man in Texas, right? You got to keep that thing going.
Yeah.
So I call myself a brain trainer for the mind. You want to stay sharp. Most people that see me on this side of the house believe in mental health, and they're on the couch for what everybody else, right, is up to in their lives. So just to really have a place to unpack that, to stay sharp with their emotional health and things like that.
Yeah. So just to be clear, it probably everybody would benefit.
Wellness, yeah.
Yeah. Wellness in general, and not
maintenance.
Yeah. Does gender, age, race matter when selecting, like when selecting your therapist to relate, or does it not matter at all?
Yeah, great question.
Uh-huh.
Because it can matter for the individual, right? For some, like men, for example, would be the least likely to go, right? Talk about their feelings, but if they did go, they might prefer another man.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to take instruction necessarily from a woman, right? Or they may not like the dynamic or feel comfortable with that dynamic because they're used to talking about their feelings, right?
Yeah.
With the more, feminine vessel, right? So
I specifically know of men and women, couples, who would greatly do well with some couples counseling, but I know two of the husbands of those couples think that if it's a female specifically, she's automatically going to go with whatever the wife says. And that is so beyond not true, or at least how therapy is supposed to be going. So I really struggle with that.
Is there any, and we can cut this if it's not a relevant question, but are there any, I know in nursing, you've got nurses BSN, you've got nurses with, so the full bachelor's nurses, you've got associate nurses, and then you've got LPNs that have a different credential, but they use the same term nurse that applies all the way up. And again, I'm not trying to in any way diminish people who work in the field, but there's a major distinction, I think, with a licensed bachelor BSN nurse versus someone. Are there counselors that use that title that have far less credential? I mean, you're mentioning master's programs. I'm going to use the word residency. I don't think that's the right term, but there's a lot of work that went into your credentials. Are there people that tout themselves as counselors that you need to be cautious of?
absolutely.
So what do you look for? What is it? LPC? Is that what I need to be looking for if I'm looking for
LPC, LCSW, the licensed clinical social worker. Social workers are actually kind of taken as a field and tasked to have a dual training.
Okay.
So in the state of Texas, you'll see a lot of that in government work. Counselors like myself, LPC, we believe in the micro to macro model after the World War, and there weren't enough psychiatrists and psychologists. They came out with LPC. We don't work like social workers might from macro, the system, how it affects the person, but from the person into the outer world. So I definitely believe that not all counselors are created equal.
Good. That was perfect. Scoot
Okay,
over.
scoot
There
over.
we go.
Yeah, I heard
Try
it.
to,
I
and
heard
Katie,
it.
stay where you're at, and we are
All right.
perfect there.
All right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are there acronyms to what? Again, when I say watch out for, I'm not trying to diminish people making a living. I'm not diminishing, but I think it's fair. People should know what they're getting. People shouldn't be thinking they're getting a doctor if they're getting someone with 6 months of a training. So so look out for LPC, LC. Say the last one again.
LPC, LPC-S,
LPC-S.
LCSW.
Okay.
Are some great ones. And then, just like any other given provider, we're not all created equal there. And
Sure.
even if you're looking for a faith-based, I personally tout for those who have both the secular and the faith-based to not, it's great to know that your therapist has a relationship with God, but also, too, that they've done a lot of the work in the secular realm.
So I was going to get here later, but we can go there now. I think I have a background in growing up evangelical, faith background, but I have a very hard resistance when I hear the faith-based anything. And do you find tension sometimes between faith-based? How do I say this? My concern sometimes is there's almost a reliance on a higher power that doesn't include the work that we know we need to do. All I can really do is to the gym. I can pray all I want. I can wish into existence, but until I eat the right food and pick up the weight, nothing's really going to change. I have to believe that's true with your mental wellness as well.
Absolutely.
Do you find anything in some faith-based approaches that maybe limit people's ability to develop?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
like Katie was saying here, there's a lot, I think, of rigidity within the religious sect or community. You hear mental health, you immediately think blasphemy, atheist, right? You
Sure.
going by your own strength and not by God's strength. But I love the analogy. Like you said, faith without works is dead. Like,
Yeah.
what are you believing God for, and what are you doing about it? How are your finances? Are you studying for that job, right? Are you doing your part? That's kind of how this works. Bo, and I say, you're a minister. You're a minister, right? We're all called to walk it out the faith, and if necessary, right, then talk. We be talking all day long, right? But what does your walk say?
The question reads, how do you know when therapy is working? But however you want to approach that, what are realistic expectations the first month, 2 months? I know it's very individual, but for an individual maybe brand new to therapy, they come in, here, let me phrase the question this way. Someone who's not outright suicidal ideations, but just struggling with maybe like acute depression, just saying, what, I'm struggling right now. I want to go. What does it look like to feel successful these first couple months in therapy for the patient, the client?
It's definitely individual. So at that intake, we do that assessment. Just kind of the first few sessions would be the building rapport stage. I say, if you're feeling at all awkward, that's exactly how you're supposed to feel. I'm a perfect stranger, and you're divulging some of your most intimate times, moments, and seasons in your life, right? So just knowing in advance to not have an expectation beyond what it might feel like if two friends were out at Starbucks, except in session, it's all about you. You're not going to hear about my day. I'm going to tell you about my day, right? But you get
My
the
boyfriend ran his mouth today.
Come on,
No.
come on. I'm going to leave it right over there, right? And it's going to be all about you. So just allowing that space, it may be a dynamic that you've never experienced before, because we tend to, you share, I share. You, me too. Oh, we have this thing in common. It's not quite like that when it comes to therapy.
I know my therapist, I think actually says the phrase, I'm not a real person. You can talk to me. And
It's one of my favorite things.
so, and the context of that was, if I'm angry, I mean, I might let a couple curse words slip here, but I'm not trying to be profane for the sake of it or just whatever. But, and I'm talking to a professional, but if I'm angry about something and it's coming out, I'm like fucking, and I'm like, okay, well, hold on. And the therapist is like, just let that process happen. So is that normal?
That's what we want.
Okay.
Honestly, to keep it real with how you feel, that your feelings matter, right? And I like to say, I like cheese and corn, so I will be cheesy and I will be corny, but we will personify those feelings, right? So let anger in the room. Anger, have a seat. Talk to me, right? Just to hear what anger has to say.
Yeah.
There's healthy range anger or righteous anger, right? To really sit with that. Because pressing it down, there's a clinical term called spiritual bypassing, where you can be so quick to want to get, back up to the shout and feeling good, but you skipped all the way over all the inner work that needs to happen for your true breakthrough. And I think that's one of the spaces you were referring to earlier.
I have to completely agree with you on that. Having gone through what I've gone through with the loss of a spouse, I so quickly remember those dark early days where I just want to feel normal again. I want to feel like me again. God help me get out of this. And had I skipped through all the work that I had to dig down deep to do, I would have been missing so much. So that really resonates with me.
How would you handle people who think therapy is just talking? We've danced on it, but that's kind of a common, you're highly credentialed. And I wanted to highlight that because it's not just sitting on the couch. It's not just tell me what you felt today. So maybe kind of put those dots together a little more. This isn't just talking.
Thank you for asking that, and that's what a lot of people think, and I could do that with a friend. It's a little bit different there. There are some methods I don't necessarily announce, right, every orientation I'm about to go into or modality of treatment I'm about to go into, but I'm looking for patterns, right, themes, what's happening underneath the story, and if you can share, through a space of processing what happened, it's about your most intense, uncomfortable emotion right underneath that. And your triggers versus the root. What's your attachment style, right? Really looking at your background, perhaps with family or that very first relationship, right? That we tend to walk through a lens of the world based on our perspective of either our values or our connotations towards certain tones, right? Certain words chosen, even certain impressions of people, right? So kind of looking at all the ways that you're connecting your response or reaction in that moment, right? So if we can get up underneath that, we can kind of see, okay, what is the body saying? Are you listening to the body? We often don't consider that sometimes through, the parasympathetic nervous system. We've got this very loud amygdala, and the amygdala's job is not to know truth. I had one client say, feelings are stupid. I'm like, yeah, kinda. That's a great way to put it. Our feelings don't care about reality. They don't know reality. One job, your brain's main job is not to care about your mental health. It's not to keep you happy. Your brain's job is to keep you alive. And so a very loud amygdala will tell stories and paint pictures that aren't even there, wanting to come up with all the different possible realities for what could go wrong. Right? So it's our job to kind of take those scripts, look at those distortions, where did they come from, and how are we going to speak to that? And then, a lot of the times, I believe that God sends me every client. They may not know about it. We may not even talk about God, but God sends every client. And sometimes there's a window of opportunity where we can be direct. Where did you first hear that lie about yourself? Right? There's two opportunities. There's question 11 on this script that your assistant gave. Why do you think therapy still gets misunderstood as something's wrong with you instead of something's growing in you? Right? That was such a great way to put it. Something is inside of you, and it's blocking you from your next version of yourself. Right? So to lean into the pain, to see what's keeping you from seeing what God already sees.
I love the way you just put that.
What are common hurdles you see? What are common misconceptions or hurdles you see people going in? We mentioned some. This is just talking. I'm fine. I don't need to come in. I don't have a problem. I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. Or I think the other one I would add, if I have anxiety, there's medication for that. And again, I'm not dismissing the utility of that. It's a separate thing. What are some other common misconceptions you hear, hurdles you have to overcome to get people to engage?
That's a great question, right? So we all have our therapeutic matches. I find for me, my particular hurdle with people is maybe in that intake where even though I warn, there's 21 questions coming, right, that it would take a lifetime to explain, and we've got a nickel of time, right? But sometimes just to sit back and let them tell their story, and then at the end of it, they say, I could do that with somebody else, right? They come for the next session. I might follow back up, trying to kind of set up the check-in space and get the buy-in towards every, area of focus that we go into. But now we're at 3 sessions, right, where I'm telling my story, and what's this lady here doing for me, right? So the idea is that it takes time, right? At least a year and a half for the brain to rewire through a process called neuroplasticity, right? So if you're here to tell your story, I'm here to listen, but that's just still more intake. You're still teaching me, and I'm a learner of you, right? So as much as you put in is as much as you're going to get out.
How frequent do you have, because I've had this moment in sessions where I go in and, usually sessions are an hour, and, you go through the exercises to start, and then all right, well, what's going on? Where do you want to hold space today? And by the time I relay the story, I've already kind of figured out. You know what I mean? Does that happen a lot? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I was watching a program on HBO yesterday called The Newsroom, and one of the characters is sitting with a therapist, and he goes, I want a sleeping pill. He goes, that's fine. I'll give you one, but sit with me for the hour. And of course, he goes through what happened that day, and he was a jackass on the air to somebody. And he goes, all right, you're right, fine, but give me the pill. You're right, I get it. But he didn't even all the clinician had to do was to just prompt the questions, and by the time they're done, is that a frequent occurrence?
My seasoned clients, they know the drill, right? I'm a mirror to you, with you. Mirror neurons is another space where I might move with you, right, to reflect on a certain space, and not to, y'all have freed me because you announced it, right? So sometimes I'm praying too while it's happening, and God is showing me where to go, what to ask, but I may not tell you about it. I might scare you off, right? But no, so in the space, as I'm listening to where they're going in the body, I'm just kind of moving them in the direction for them, and again, I'm still listening for you to hear back from you.
Yeah.
When my therapist does that, I feel like she's helping guide me through the trauma. I love it. That's one of my favorite things. Because either I don't have the wherewithal to dissect it that way, or I actually need somebody holding my hand, walking me through that valley to figure out, okay, there it is. So I enjoy it when my therapist.
I have the next person is going to be on. His name is Dr. Justin Reyna. He's a chiropractor, but I think that term, unfortunately, will go through as some myths associated with it. It's more of a wellness, a body wellness. I think it's very analogous. I think you'll enjoy. But what's fun when he works out with us at the gym, and he's one of our strongman athletes. But it's funny, this part of my middle back will hurt or something. And he'll go, yeah, you're compensating for right here. This is weak and you're compensating. It sounds very similar to your body, what you're describing with, your body's reacting a certain way because it's trying to block pain or manage so you can exist, you can float. Is that a fair?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. I might feel it in the chest or in the knees or in the back. And, again, I won't share too much outside of, that's just how I'm wired to listen sometimes. And
what do you...
that out of you.
I have a buddy, and we stopped being friends over, basically, he had gotten into a toxic relationship. He knew it was toxic. Whatever, I do dumb things every day of my life. That's not the problem. But he always wanted to talk about it, and we're like, buddy, respectfully, we can be friends. We don't have to talk about it, but you know what we're going to say. You know what the advice is. You know what the problem is. You don't follow. How do you handle that? Because I'm sure that people come in, whether it's people get into the same, guys only date strippers. What could go wrong? Or women only date abusers. Or, I don't want to simplify to that. Or the same patterns. How do you manage that as the clinician or the therapist when they know what the steps are to take and they just don't want to help themselves? Or does that happen?
Oh, that's a great question. Something that we, work on from undergrad, and hearing different approaches is always important to know how are you specifically going to handle it for these situations and with these types of individuals. And there should come a time with every therapist where if it's some unique outlier where therapy isn't happening, then ethically speaking, after a certain period of time, people can fire their clinicians, and you can,
Fire
fire
your
clients,
Yeah.
and you can refer them out, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, 'cause I ascribe to, if we are doing this work, there's likely something else also happening, right? So just kind of holding space with the goals, right? Going back to the drawing board, if you will, for what is it we're working on, or sometimes with couples, right? They come in, they're not there for naught, right? They're not doing it for their health. There's a likely people are coming because a thing happened. Where I would like them to come at the beginning.
Right.
Right? It's normally, when a thing has happened. So telling them that you can argue at home, right?
Yeah.
You didn't come here so you could argue in front of me. Now I may watch it once, maybe twice, I'm gathering information of how y'all argue without intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, outside of an individual coming in and doing their own thing, I say we're never in the same place twice. You might think, oh, I fell off the wagon, I'm still doing this one thing, but there's likely something else that can be addressed. Now, I don't work primarily with addiction. I work at it as a second to the primary space of whatever the mood disorder is, or the life focus is, that should be handled with, AA and group and your own sponsor in that space. And then if you're stabilized, if you will, then that's something and outgoing that I can come alongside you with, or if it's medication management, come alongside you with and monitor that in that space. But overall, again, it's not Groundhog's Day. It might feel like Groundhog's Day in your life, but there's always some moving parts.
Did you ever watch The Sopranos? You should.
Yeah.
The entire premise is
The therapist and
the lead. That's the vehicle. They tell the story, and at the end, she ends up firing him because he's a sociopath. So, spoiler alert: it's 25 years old. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Sopranos yet, bite me. So yeah.
Snippets.
Yeah. I might have oversimplified, but yeah.
No, I say that at women, unless you're a sociopath, right? You're going to identify with these feelings.
Actually, all right, so this is fun for me. What percentage, so every day I do a lot of family law, and I cannot count my partner as a narcissist. They're a sociopath. How many people actually are, and how common is it?
Great question, right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of overused word. And in this society, we all maybe share some narcissistic features, if you want to keep it real about it, right? Very ego-focused society. We have platforms. We've all got social media, right? But that space of empathy, right? If somebody is perpetually with that inability, and even their schools of thoughts on the dissenting views as it relates to personality disorders and what truly makes one, and whether it's more nature than nurture, or if there was a trauma even in young age when personality is still arguably being formed in that sense.
Yeah.
But outside of those as meeting the strict criteria, I would say I would move far away from that and just look at it as it relates to features, right? Because nobody ever says, gosh, they're so borderline. Like nobody even knows what that is, right? But you'll go straight to narcissists, right?
Yep.
And everybody knows it. They look alike. They can look alike.
That's funny. Is there anything people can start doing to improve their mental health under stress? What are some things, stress management tools in general? I have an idea. This is very individualized, but
Yes, you nailed it. A lot of the things that we see or think are so elementary are what the brain is made of, right? So drinking your water, outdoors, sunlight, taking a deep breath. Well, I breathe already. Well, thank your body.
Yeah, right.
Right? That you have another breath, right? So in through the nose, right, for the wide lung expansion, because it's all about the exhale. Long, slow exhale. And what happens in the brain is gray matter is being built. It's the brain were a tree. The neural pathways are the branches, and growing from that are the leaves, and that's the gray matter. We want big, bustling leaves because that's the body's part of the body's AC system. When you tell yourself to calm down, that your brain actually listens to you, right? That's also a trick. God knew what he was doing when he put our nose right next to our brains, right? We take a deep breath in, it sends blood flow back to the brain, right? When fight or flight response, blood flow leaves the brain, goes into the hands for fight and the feet for flight response or freeze response, right? So when we take that deep breath, if there's a bear somewhere out there, right? We want to be breathing slowly. I'll say that feelings are foolish, right? So you got to tell the brain, we're okay. And if we're breathing slowly, we're telling the brain, coast is clear. Right? That was a message that we're overriding. And we've got this from here.
When sorry, did you?
I like that. Yeah. I don't know that I've ever really put it in my head that way. I hope I remember that, because I can see how well that would help me specifically in times of anger. So.
I remember talking.
What else helps?
Yeah, I remember talking to Austin and here using that chair, and we were talking long term, because even at my size, there's a point where I need to let the size go and get to some heart health. But and him obviously being 120, 30 pounds bigger than me, but we were laughing about the things that we do to try to progress in our strongman activities. Eat protein, sleep, drink your water, breathing and exercises. Turns out that just makes you healthy in general. And it's kind of funny, like not to in any way diminish the credentials, but it turns out if we're walking and we're eating right and we're sleeping and we're hydrating, a lot of things can magically, air quote, disappear. You know what I mean? Like some of those things. Not to diminish. There's a reason medication's out there, therapy's out there, but some of these answers might be more self-evident than we want to believe, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll say through neuroscience, we're learning more about that. And if you don't want to take it to Bible, even the Bible tells us. Not a science book, but what, all along, right? Focus on what is good.
This is kind of going backwards, but I do want to hear your answer. If someone's listening and they're on the fence about reaching out for therapeutic help, what would you say to them?
I would ask, how is life working right now? And a lot of people, answer, well, fine, thank you very much, right? But then, but when we talk about those next levels of ourselves, right? And if you have, the insurance and you have the opportunity, or even if not, there's services out there for those in need that, just to sit with and talk with somebody. We are not allowed to share, right? Everything is, I say, unless you killed somebody, and even that, right, they have to come for you in the court of law, or you're about to kill yourself, that's a reportable share. But overall, you have your space within the four walls to talk to somebody who's not going to, again, share anything you have to say, and it's not going to be about them. You get 1 hour a week dedicated to you, to hear back from you on what's needed for your best life.
Well, so let's go through that a little bit, because that confidentiality is a big deal. It obviously, in my profession, lawyer clients, I'm probably the most famous confidential. When we do mediations, those are strictly confidential. The offers stay confidential for good reason. So you're struggling with drug addiction and no one knows. Maybe you're in a marriage or relationship and you don't want to say you're having a porn addiction, or there's a flirtatious relationship you don't want to, or even an affair you don't want to admit, and oh man, I'm in distress, but the last thing I want to do is not to condone any of this, by the way, but I'm good, babe, we're good. So but obviously that confidentiality has to be key, because otherwise, if it's going to be reported. So can you clarify again what are the exceptions, if any, to the confidentiality?
So if you're planning to kill yourself or someone else, that's a reportable share. to protect you from yourself or protect you from the public. If you've already killed somebody, that's not a reportable share in and of itself, right? So then you would say court subpoena is another one. So if I get a subpoena from court, as I was sharing earlier, a lot of times the counselor and the lawyer, we're not friends professionally. No. We don't want to go to court, right?
No.
We're on the side of the clinical work, right? And protecting the notes and the shares as to the best of our ability. And even in the court of law, we're on the side of sharing what is only necessitating ethical and legal reporting. Another space is if you've given me permission to talk to a third party, like a family member or a provider. And even then, the onus is on the clinician, not the client, for what gets shared and when.
So is it HIPAA the same law protects everything else?
Yes,
sir. Right.
There's a bit of difference with client minors. So
Okay.
One gets stickier. There's one reason why many clinicians maybe move away from children and families because there's so much more to protect, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it gets hard working with or challenging legally to work with the client minor because of that space of confidentiality you want with the client minor, but client primary is still the parent.
Yeah.
So having to navigate that with the family, and that should happen more closer to intake, so everyone knows what they're signed up for in terms of that, and they can make that family plan together with the therapist.
Imagine that gets harder the older the child gets, right? Imagine a 14, 15-year-old girl starting to experience sexual experiences or drug experiences. I don't want mom and dad to know, but they're navigating their own adulthood or adolescence, and that's probably fun to navigate.
So that's the perfect time for a therapist.
I would imagine.
12-year-old, right? Sons or daughters. I love the families that just, and they could be telehealth now.
Yeah.
And they just, you have them in a dance class. You could have them at the therapist appointment every Thursday, and I'm like the auntie, but not, right? Because it's all about them even then.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a safe space.
I half asked this, but I want to ask it more directly. What are the biggest barriers that stop adults from getting help? And she writes pride, cost, the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
What have you experienced? What are the biggest barriers that you've seen?
You nailed it. And I don't even know if there's an order to the pride, cost,
Stigma.
stigma.
Well, it's probably a different person, right? Like some cultures, I know growing up masculine and all that. Like, I don't even, just grit it out, bear it. I think it's 2025. Some of that's gone away, but I guess it depends where you grew up and how and stuff.
I was just going to say, I remember during COVID 2020 when all of the BetterHelp ads started coming up on TV, and I've struggled with depression. I say my whole life. The first time I ever felt depressed was when I was on Ritalin. That I did not feel like me. I hated it, but I took it anyways because I was told to. So whatever. But I've struggled a large part of my life, and I feel like once COVID happened and we really started hearing about these terrible suicides and people going off on tangents and stuff like that, that's really when some of the stigma started to maybe mellow out a little bit. I do believe that there's still a stigma with it, which is really sad. I personally think, as somebody who I don't always take advantage of my appointments the way that I should, which I really wish maybe I should talk to my therapist about because I don't know, I have a couple good days there and I'm like, oh, I'm good.
Or just do when your husband tells you to go.
Fair. But there's a large stigma. I'm also somebody who gave a late spouse the ultimatum to say if you're going to continue to do that, I'm either out or we're doing this.
Yeah.
Because there is no other way. It hurts too much.
We're getting to couples here pretty quick. So
Yeah.
The other stigma I would add is I think unfortunately faith-based people with spiritual just prayed away. I think I was we might cut this, but just I was at a funeral recently and there were some just vibes of like it'll be okay. There's a widow and kids right here that
Young
maybe
kids,
that maybe
too.
don't need to hear it's okay, he's in heaven. I'm not saying that belief's not my problem. My problem is that what seems to be reductive, and it's like, and again, I don't want to take away from someone's comfort if that's what gives it to them, and I want to get into this a little bit, but the reality is, I don't care if this life's temporal compared to the eternity. This effing hurts right now, and I mean, the opportunity to be with a widow, and see life on the other side and the grief, and I can't pretend to understand it. It to me, churches need to be a place of absolute comfort and acceptance, and unfortunately fall into a lot of judgment. We'll get there in a little bit. I'm going to go into that a little bit. All right, we're going to go a little quicker here. How do you help recognize? We talked about this a little, but how do you help recognize patterns in their own upbringing that affect their current relationships? And I'm sure this is probably like 6 hours of coursework. Yeah. Number 12. How do you help clients recognize patterns from their own upbringing that affect their current relationships?
Just different approaches, right? Definitely going through the door of a current situation or scenario, and then maybe here they're leaning into actual assessments. I do use Gottman method. There's a space there where they provide an interactive couples assessment, and that might come out through that work or with an attachment styles assessment. But by and large, it's more so the processing and walking them back, and people are the most knowledgeable of themselves. Very few people, right, have the opportunity to have someone so close to them say, in many cases, this person knows me better than I know myself, right? Maybe a parent or loved one, your wife, your husband, but not everybody knows how you feel, how you're feeling, what you're feeling, in the way that you do, because chances are we don't always know how we're feeling exactly, right, and the intensity of it and where it's coming from. So really sitting with that person as they reveal it to themselves, or through the stories, or making the connections, and it'll, like you said earlier, sometimes it'll hit them. I'm just realizing now, this is my dad talking, and I'm 8, and I'm a hurt little boy.
Is there I was divorced somewhat recently, and dated, and I think I knew this in my head, but I was floored to build connections with people, how frequent sexual abuse is of kids, and it again, I could have answered the test question, it's 50% of kids or more, but to actually be with people that have been through it, when you're diving into those areas with people that obviously that trauma affects every area of their life going, do you have to pace how you do that? How do you do that safely? Because I have to imagine, someone's 40 and working, parenting, in a relationship, having sex with their partner. Like, they've done a lot of cover work. They've done a lot of, their bodies found a way to exist and survive. Do you have to be careful with how you work through that trauma and pace it a certain way?
Absolutely. And definitely individualized when it comes to approach, and when kind of working through the outer rings, we will likely go through how it is that I approach that, kind of using the like the dartboard or the target sign. The outer rings would be the fires, right? The daily stressors of our day. And then that next inner ring might be the triggers. So we might do a lot of work with just putting out fires and understanding the triggers, right? But after time and some digging, we every once in a while will land on a root, right? And in this case, if someone might come in and go straight to root. I'm here for sexual abuse or trauma, and we scope that scene. I want to make sure that they have the tools for how to cope first. If they do go into a flooded space, if it's a child, I want to have a different set of criterion to make sure that it's reached. We like to use the analogy a lot in the counseling world of a scab on a wound that you don't want to pick, especially if the child still has to function. They have to go to school every day. They have to socialize, right? So if there's a natural scab on their wound called I don't want to talk about it, guess what? We're not going to do
Fair.
right away. We're not going to pick that, right? So that's definitely individualized of what is the need clinically, if there are any legal needs involved in that space. We definitely want to move at the pace for that individual and when it is safe to. Now it's a scab. I'm going to another analogy of gosh, you're severing at the limb, right? Blood hemorrhaging everywhere. You just want to wrap that bad boy up and maybe don't, right, mess with it right away. And that might be 10 years, 20 years. And now a thing happened. You got married. Your little girl turned into a teenager and started becoming active. Whatever I was abused. Sometimes we won't even, this is so far, repressed that they don't even realize that my relative and I don't talk because this, right?
Yeah.
So to slowly begin unraveling that is a process that's unique to each individual.
So you open the door to it, so we'll kind of move along. What are some differences working with children and then working with adults? You mentioned one, just who the client is and that dynamic. So what are some others?
Goodness. So when we talk about brain development, right? Different parts of the brain are developed at different ages. And some children can handle talk therapy at a sophisticated 8 or 9. Other children, not so much. They're still bouncing off the walls everywhere. So,
And this goes into that next question. Like some kids just don't have the vocabulary. They're 5 or 6.
Come on. What happened to you? You might be 30, but what happened to you at 5 happened to you where you didn't have the language or even know your feelings. So you might want to talk about it, but when it comes time to do it, there are no words. So it's a little off topic, but yes, it matters when it happened. It matters the age of your ability to process it. But then going through it, and I just said this the other day, we are all 10 on the inside, right? Your inner child, your core, like let's not front, right? You may not be the same person, but deep down, by and large, right, you are who you are by the age of 10 or so. So to hang out with someone's inner child, right? We can go through the door and here's your answer of play, right? Even when it comes to couples in the bedroom, there's foreplay, right? We go through doors of exploration with play. Boop. Playing with this mic here. All right. So through play,
Hurting other people's toys. Yeah.
Focus. The idea of a child who gets comfortable enough with their therapist that they can go through these exercises and through play, they may not be able to talk about it in the first person, but they can draw a picture or work with different play therapy tools to get the narrative and being very delicate there because you also don't want to feed them one.
So the question next is what role parents should play in child's therapy, especially in high conflict cases. I'm going to modify it to be how do you maybe one parent thinks they need therapy and the other doesn't. Like just generally where are you at in divorce cases or these kind of issues?
As I said, the children often have more legal protections or need more legal protections. So when it comes to the clinician, having that divorce decree that both parents, if there has been a marriage and a divorce, that on the divorce decree that both have medical consent to, and then having the permission from both parents. Otherwise, you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
And a lot of clinicians just would rather not.
Fair. So let's say you do have one parent with the permission and one not. That parent gives permission and supports it, but the other parent doesn't. How do you manage that?
No, do not pass go, right? 'Cause that parent can come in, right, cause a scene, right? And there's your license, and it's really all about the child, right?
Yeah.
Child's, safety. And it's unfortunate that not every parent either agrees with therapy or who the chosen therapist is, right? Because you chose it, right? Especially if there's a custody case or battle in court going on.
That is one of my favorites. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, what is your move if you have a divorce client and let's say it's a man, he wants his son to go to therapy for everything that's been going on and and everything, but mom doesn't. Specifically, mom doesn't. What is your move?
So luckily, depending whether the case is in temp orders or there's an order, the in Texas, it always has to be established whether someone has the right to consent to psychiatric or psychological, and therapy would fall under psychological in our state. So 90% of the time, each parent has what's called an independent right to consent. So there is no legal hiccup in our end of it to either parent most of the time to permit a child going. Now, what was interesting here is the clinician might just be like, nah, both parents aren't signed off. I'm not going to go through that process, and I don't blame them. If for some reason that's not established, simply a motion to the court to ask straight up, we want a therapist involved. In our county, in Bear, I've almost never heard of a judge denying a third-party counselor of some kind. They want to hear from, well, they want the child to have someone to talk to that's not a parent, even not an amicus attorney or something like that. So again, usually it's permitted. In my decree, it's it's there. What I do run into though is sometimes logistics make a huge difference in who has more power. So oftentimes if the dad's the non-custodial and they're getting weekends, not a lot of clinicians always work on the weekends, or it's just not as available for intake, or just the reality they have less time. And so one parent by logistics has more control in these areas, and that becomes a problem. So you just have to navigate it. You just have to straight up say, what is this process? So best case, you probably have permission in your decree. Worst case, you have to go to the court and ask. Now, sometimes these rights are exclusive to one party to the other. That's really appropriate. I know your son's autistic, high-functioning autistic. Kids that are autistic, severe ADHD, severe ADD, those three, the treatments are so... There's a lot of opinion on how to treat those things, and a lot of us, not just use the word spectrum, of approaches. And if the parents even if they're both well-intended, wildly disagree with what that should be, especially ADHD, because some people run to meds and some people run away. And it's probably individualized. At that point, usually a court says this person's in charge of it. So there's continuity. Because the worst experience is they take Ritalin at dad's house, they don't take it at mom's house. Yeah. And it's easy to say go to the doctor. Well, if they went to 10 doctors, there'd be 5 prescribing and 5 not. Yes. And at some point, the continuity matters. So, yeah, it's unpleasant. Yeah. The best is when the parents are on the same page.
Oh, for sure.
And I mean, I'm hearing it now. Especially if the clinician doesn't want to. I don't mean it. I'm saying that incorrectly. Doesn't feel like they can get involved or can fully help because both parents are on the same page. I mean, even just identifying that there's an issue. Yeah. I mean, I would have to. I'm under the kind of lazy opinion that any kid going through a split of their parents, divorce or split, probably needs to be in therapy, period. Yeah. Maybe that's too lazy of an analysis, but I kind of tend to...
Therapy for everybody.
Yeah, for everybody, yeah. I mean, just in general, again, I agree with you in general. I think everybody should be working out to some degree. Yes. Everybody should be walking, everybody should do strength training, everybody should eat their protein, and everybody should
drink your water.
Drink your water, it's almost like God knows go to sleep. Rest. Yeah, yes. And we'll get to couples. Everybody should be having sex, but we'll get to the next part. But yeah,
the first commandment, God gave Adam and Eve.
That's right. There you go.
Go have sex.
Well, we'll get to same sex too, so it's not just procreating. But there you go.
Does therapy look like day to day?
It says, what does quote doing the work end quote in therapy actually look like?
Again, it could look like 2 friends out for coffee, except it's all about you. Another analogy I use is that mirror, right? Fixing your collar, your crown, and go back out, live your best life. Another analogy I give is borrowed, right? Not invented, but like salmon migrating upstream. Sometimes there's some resistance. Right? Sometimes it can feel like that, and then when those spaces come, I might go from that more gentle space to a more direct approach. Like, what's that? There's a there there. And I try to warn clients that day may come.
I love the phrase, there's a there. Okay. So I was going to do this anyway. I didn't know Katie was going to sit with us today. But I'm going to guess, based on your conversation, that, and you've actually said this before, couples therapy, they should be there before there's a problem. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. The analogy I like to use is a car. You take your car to a shop, you might have diagnostics, right? That's your first 4 sessions. But if you're a brand new couple, right, that's your Ferrari. You want to keep that thing by going and taking it to the shop, right? Going for maintenance. Don't wait till you have a lemon in your driveway and think it's going to go somewhere. I've had couples actually say, man, I wish you would have done this a long time ago, but now, it's a little too late.
That was going to be my next question. Is there sometimes just a point of no return and it's too late?
Sure, absolutely. And then again, depending on the therapist, depending on their modality of treatment, they may want to assess different language. For example, if both couples are leaning in versus one leaning out, if they're both leaning out, that particular therapist may have their own criteria of who they even see or treat. If one or both of those are the case, whether one's leaning out or both versus both leaning in and wanting the marriage. So let's face it, it's easier to work with people who want to be with each other, right?
That's an interesting space because I think of two areas where people might be leaning out, but two outside forces forcing it strong, but giving it struggle. One is faith and one is kids. So how do you, you're a couple, you're proclaimed a certain faith that divorce is, we'll just say, frowned on, or you got kids together. It's better if we stay together. If that's the sole motivation, how do you approach those two things? I guess they're separate. Let's take the faith. My faith says I can't get divorced, but this is not working. How do you? Do you see what I'm asking? I don't think.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yes.
No, you're absolutely coming across it.
Yeah.
And just assessing what's in it for them, right?
Yeah.
So what are the shared values? Why are you keeping this union? What are your beliefs around that? Because every believer believes different things differently,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So the idea that if both of them are, according to the scenario that I'm hearing, that both want the marriage, but they don't want the marriage. They're supposed to do it for the kids' sake.
Yes.
For my belief's sake. So just kind of leaning in and finding the new narrative of maybe it's not Eros, in love feelings anymore, but maybe we can look at love differently through a space of the love for mankind. I've worked with people who, did learn their partner was of another sexual orientation. So what now, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for us? What does that look like for moving forward? Are we going to stay committed, right? Really having those hard conversations, or, like the example you gave earlier, there may have just all of a sudden the body keeps a score, right? Could recall a sexual trauma, and now there's a barrier in the bedroom. And so all these things can disrupt the marriage where they may not feel like their bodies can do it anymore. So really sitting with people to establish or reestablish a life after mourning what's no longer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How could someone tell? We'll get there. I'm getting there. That's fine. Don't worry. I mean, it's awkward with you sitting right here. We're gonna go there. I don't give a crap.
I was waiting.
It's coming. I got married at 20, and I don't want to just say the words I was too young. I was unprepared. I was wildly unprepared. I was very religious.
But also, nobody talked to you about what getting married actually means and what it can look like.
100%.
In a lot of different ways.
Yeah, my parents are a full-on love story. I'm sure I'm only privy to X%. But if you get a chance to meet them, it's not just name only. The way they talk about each other in private, the way they treat each other. Yeah, just the way they speak of each other to each other. That's what I grew up with, like a full-on, romantic love story from start to finish. My dad's military, so they traveled and moved location to location together. So, it was truly them against the world. They went through, my dad was rifted from the military for a time, got back in. They went through financial distress. They were terrified, tough jobs, long nights, all of it. My mom had some health issues along the way. My mom lost both her parents when I was the age of 15 and 16. Literally, all three of my grandparents died in like a 9-month period. They experienced that. And through it all, again, I'm sure I there are parts that I don't know about, but what I observed and what I know to be true was just a fallen love story. So that's what I think marriage is. I mean, like that's it. And, I get married at 20, and I'm not going to sit here and disparage my ex-wife, but it very quickly wasn't that. It wasn't. I thought you were supposed to because we're Christian, and you do that before you have sex. I thought you're supposed to have kids, and if you work really hard and you're faithful, your life's just going to be happy.
You'll prosper.
Yeah, you're going to prosper. Nah, not at all. So I guess the better question is, you're 20, 21, 22. I don't know that that's too young to get married. Plenty of couples do it and stay there forever. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare for it? And then how do you maintain it? Because you're not who you're going to be at 22. Right. I don't care how developed you think you are. You're not the same. I'm 40. I'm not the same human in any way, shape, form. Life experience shaped me in good and bad ways. Yeah. And that's going to happen. Loss will happen. Grief will happen. How do you I kind of know the answer, but I think it's worth articulating. How do you prepare for it? And how do you stay committed through it as you grow into different people, but stay growing together? Because I'm sure it's possible.
Miracles, signs, and wonders. So we don't know. We take a risk, right?
Fair.
And I know that there are people out there, but I would want to sit down with them on the couch. Were to say that it was just so easy, right? Bed of roses. Mm-hmm. That it's work. And if you're not cut out for work, don't get married.
Yeah.
Right? Some days you don't feel like being married. Right? Some days you don't feel like being a mother, being a father. Right? It's a lot. So just kind of knowing that in a healthy way. It's great to have a good model, right? But even that, making comparisons to know there will never be a couple, right? Like you and Katie out there. So to make a comparison is a bit of a gross analogy, right? Because there is no other Katie. No other Bo,
my life would be boring.
So the idea that we can prepare is a great first start, right?
Yeah.
And then through that space, it would be aligning with your values of what you want, right? Making that case. I don't know if you believe in prenups. Some people do that, right? Some people, go on a lot of speed dating, look for their algorithms and what's the probability and all this. Like it depends on, who you are and what you believe about divorce, what you believe about commitment, what are your deal breakers, right? Let's say go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Before the marriage. Right?
I was just about to say, and we're not disparaging anybody here. I do want to say, though, if you find yourself in a situation where you and your partner are having to go to therapy, the therapy is not going to work if you're the one of you is doing the work and willing to put it all out on the table. You both have to be willing to put it all out on the table, to spill it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. For us, in our couples therapy, I love that I don't feel like anything is off limits. Anything could come up, and we're going to discuss it. We're going to dissect it. I feel like in order to be able to heal certain parts of you or to understand maybe more of where your partner is coming from or why you or your partner did something, you've got to be able to be a completely open book. That's my take. I'm not saying it's necessarily right, but you've got to be willing to get in there and talk about the nitty-gritty.
That's the most common complaint I get. Even I know probably more cliche is the husband doesn't want to be there. This doesn't work. You'll favor the wife. But I mean, I've got two friends I can think of, male friends that, it's almost like, oh, we'll take you, the wife, like, I'll take you to therapy. She'll tell you what's for. And like, no, probably not. One, but more importantly, the wrong approach, right? Like, what's broken here. All right. Well, we'll get to it because I know you're anxious for me to go there. How important is physical intimacy in relationships, and should it be addressed in the therapeutic setting?
Say that last part.
And should it be addressed in the therapeutic setting when it's not going well?
I am a believer, absolutely, that so I quoted earlier that God gave us sex. I know, not everybody's faith-based, so I won't say that every time, but if you want to know what I believe there, right, that it can be systemic, what's happening in the bedroom, a microcosm of everything else happening outside the bedroom, or it can be ground zero, where it starts with keeping this form of communication sacred and prioritized, right? Depending on the couple, right?
Sure.
Depending on the couple, that is a language that I believe to be very spiritual, for better or for worse, and that you lock in and you stay synced in with your partner through hearing from each other through that space.
Would you agree? It's just like everything else, though. It can take work.
Oh,
It's not accidental. Is that fair to say?
A lot of work.
Well, I mean, I do divorces, right? I mean, go ahead. Did I interrupt? I'm
No,
sorry. Yeah.
go for it.
I do divorces, and I mean, I get very similar narratives. They don't look the same as they used to. They didn't keep up their physical appearance, or they stopped losing interest, or the very cliche is the man stops trying. I get a lot of women come in and be like, no matter what I did, he didn't desire me.
or the way that he desired me was not what I needed.
Right. He
Mhm.
tried in ways that, initiated ways that weren't.
Or
what I
almost a
wanted.
turn off.
Almost, yeah. And I mean, like, a lot of things go in here. Like one, if you sit at a desk job and you don't work out, your testosterone's probably hit nada, and like that stuff matters. I mean, not to bring everything back to weightlifting, but like not for nothing. If you're healthy, some of this stuff is organic. If you're walking together, your endorphins are up. You're getting experiences together. This might not be as more of a chore. If you're open with the communication about it, I know a lot of times I get people in and it's like, it hit me off guard, he divorced me out of nowhere, and the guy's like, dude, we haven't had sex in 6 months, and I've been looking at you the whole time begging, but he never said the words, or he never said we need to go to therapy, or he would just ask every night, like, I'm tired, baby, and she thinks it's fine. So I mean, these things seem kind of obvious, but I think speaking truth to it, because again, I get a lot of business from people divorcing, and maybe it could have been fixed with clear communication, therapeutic intervention, and I hate to say it, healthier living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would also just say it has to be a priority. They can't just be accidental. It has to be intentional. That'd be my guess. But you're an expert, not me. So. Yeah.
No, we're all the experts of lives. I'm just kind of sitting with that too, the space of again, mind and body connection, and how we are literally designed for certain things.
Yeah.
Right? So when we're it says the body is a temple, right? How we're treating the body, and how the body is responding based on our treatment of it, right? So even when it relates to the body not responding to something that, say, God ordained, then what's happening over here, right? The not, because again, in the faith-based world, if I see couples and there's a breakdown and maybe they saved themselves, but then now they're here and it's not. Oh. This is what I waited for.
Yeah.
I have problems because now I have, these preconceived notions of what I thought it was or how I thought I should be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel dirty, or all these things that we don't really talk about in the church, right? But just don't do it, right? So I'm on the other side. But for the space of what the body needs, right? Talking about hormones. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Hormones, get your hormones checked, that there might be something happening.
Amen.
And that it's not always just our will, because our will might want it, but the body might have other needs.
Yeah. Well, again, same thing. Willpower doesn't overcome mental health
No.
issues. Willpower doesn't help you in the gym all that much either. At a certain level, you need to have technique and all that. Yeah. And then same thing here.
With the body being out of sorts, right, and going and stretching yourself to your next level, the oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone, right? Serotonin is the happy hormone. neuroepinephrine or neuroadrenaline, what we feel when there's love and we're receiving love back. You might have felt it when you want to clean up all of a sudden, right? There are chemicals, there's hormones, there's things happening in the body all the time that we just attribute to our energy that day, but there's really all these things and networks at play. So exercise is more than just look good, just to feel good in all the ways. For as long as we all try to live. Mm-hmm.
That was Legal Heavyweights. We interviewed Rachelle Mellieon and my beautiful bride there. I do want to get back to the therapeutic side and the counseling. You worked for CPS for a time.
Little step there.
So you're so proud of it. I can hear it in your voice. So the case I have is 404 Southwest 3D7, Court of Appeals case, in the interest of TGRM. I'll spare all the details. It's 20 pages. But the part I want to focus on is when CPS gets involved in a case and they want to terminate rights, they sue, and I won't go through all the mechanics, but the parent gets a service plan. And there's a lot of lots here, but to simplify, if the parent works the service plan, they're supposed to be reunited with their kids. Don't come at me. It is way more complex than that, but for the purposes of this conversation. Among the services are usually individual therapy and individual counseling for the parent. That's one of the many services offered. So in this particular case, mom, who had all kinds of problems, was heroin addicted when the child was born and some other horrible things, and then attempted suicide in proximity to the kids. Eventually gets terminated, gets her rights terminated. She appeals. And so I want to read from the court case, and this is established law in Texas.
Time out, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get you a water?
Yeah.
You look like you want to drink.
Yeah, every time, right? I just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mental illness or incompetence of a parent alone are not grounds for terminating the parent-child relationship. However, if a parent's mental state causes her, it's a her in this case, to engage in conduct that endangers the physical or emotional well-being of a child, that conduct can support the termination of parents' rights. A parent's mental instability and attempts to commit suicide may contribute to a finding that the parent engaged in a course of conduct that endangered a child's physical or emotional well-being as a predicate ground for termination of parental rights based on endangering conduct. I don't have a problem with the law per se. I mean, to state the obvious, if someone is struggling with mental health to the point they're having suicidal attempts, I don't think that's unfair. My experience, though, goes to a few areas. But what I'm curious, one is from you, not just from experience, but just in CPS. But when CPS timelines start, they get put on a 1-year timeline, sometimes up to 18 months. So you're going through whatever distress you're going through, whether it's trauma, surface, drugs, whatever. All right, go to therapy, fix it. You got a year. I struggle with that, and someone who does this for a living, can you give me some reasonable expectations of a person in that situation? Is a year enough? I know this is individual, but maybe just kind of broaden that conversation.
Definitely individual. I wouldn't be able to speak on any case, per se not being in that office, but, as a generality, and I can now, go back to the neuroplasticity of rewiring everything, that it would at least take a year and a half to look at one of a person's patterns of behavior. That's at least a good 6 months, right?
Yeah.
To see things in that person as it relates to who they are, by and large. And then if you're introducing tools, that they're not only grasping them, but they're utilizing them. So that is another set of behaviors over a certain period of time. So just to say that I agree with you, if where you're going is very subjective to the relationship that the client has to, the therapist has to the client or to that case that I therapists don't like to speak ill of each other, right? And but definitely is a niche of a space to know going in that you're a court-mandated therapist on deck versus someone in private practice that might have more leeway, if you will, for interventions and when they lose someone as.
My theme on this is more just, I understand attending, I understand making that I mean, what the courts will tell you, and the judges and the DAs who do this, the CPS workers, and I think often well-intentioned, although I struggle if I believe that fully. Candidly, I just do. Is you have to keep the child safe, and of course that's a reality. And if someone is just in a place where suicide is such a acute, real, on the edge possibility, no, at a certain point the kid can't go back. I understand that. That's a fair place to be. I don't want to diminish that. Similar with drugs, as someone who struggled with substance abuse, that journey can take very, very different for different people. And at the end of the day, you only have 18 years with your kids, and if you don't get it together and you're not a safe place to be, then that's just missed, and your kids miss out, and you miss out. I understand that. That's all very fair. Thank you, sweetheart.
Abby was here. Sorry.
She
was telling us that she misses us. So
she's bored again. So
yes.
She was like, Abby's my 19-year-old daughter, and when she's not running from place to place to place, and she has 10 minutes to herself, she wants to know what we're doing, because now we're important enough to hang out with. So that's it. I think what one of the many reasons I just wanted to talk to you and hang out, but also demystify therapy, promote it for people, but also in the space. I have an agenda. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a service, but I think it needs to be looked at different when I'm in these CPS courts. Progress in therapy will look very different for most people, or every person, and it might look incremental. And I almost want to make the point, if they are physically going and opening their mouth and participating, that's enough for that box to be checked. Not to say give the kids back if they're going, but just to check that one box. And if the kids are safe otherwise, there. So the next issue I deal with is they'll, because I have one more major one that really upsets me, is they'll say the person's attending, but they're not meeting the goals. You've got 12 to 18 months. What goals could they meet? That feels a lot. And
well,
then,
is that still the goal of admitting?
I'm getting to that one.
Okay.
I'm getting to that one. Yeah. See, we prepped. We did it together. So I'm glad you're here. So a lot of them say that the therapists are going to the stand and say that they're attending, but they're not participating. How comfortable how comfortable can you be? And this is a genuine question. Is someone, and I'm going to excuse some obvious, balls and strikes calls. Well, someone who swung as a strike and the ball, 5 feet off the plate. Okay, we know those. But to me, there's a real arrogance to say someone's not participating. Maybe they're participating the way they're capable of in the moment. I'm very biased. So that phrase to you, attending versus participating, what would you look for if you were asked that question and forced to go to court? Some jerk like me subpoenaed you.
I did not subpoena me. I used to work on the legal side, right? And we would create these plans, and they were honestly just, almost a cut and paste experience. Mm-hmm. So everybody kind of gets it as a default space, or at least it did decades ago when I was in the
It's still there.
Right? So being that, it's still there, right? So looking at the other space of now sitting on this side of the house, we like to believe that we know what we're doing, right? So not having permission to go into any other therapist, right, is a respect I, again, want to give.
Sure.
But in the space of getting a read on somebody, right? And if I know that they're shut down or that they're not going to go, and they might tell me, I'm just here because the court says so. That's even on my measure every week, right? Mm-hmm. Or what's your motivation scale? 0 to 5. 0 is, this is a telehealth call. The court's made you be here. 5 is takeover, right? Overall.
Mm-hmm.
So in the space of somebody not wanting to be there, it's shut down, you can just tell them how invested they are with allowing you in. Right? And if it is the case that their body's not able or mentally they're shut down, or they know that this is going to end up in the courts later, they're not really going to get a lot of work done. So the space is to go through the door of what can we work on, right? What are you willing to work on? And then as that person builds a certain space of trust, then they're going to keep, I call it like an onion, pulling back layers. But if the person's not coming to session or they're coming and shutting down, you typically know what you're dealing with. because they're gonna, in their response, there's gonna be a, let me back up and say that I don't have a lot of history here because I'm not in those spaces where people are necessarily forced unless they're minors.
Yeah.
I have done child and family, but with adults, they're not gonna come spend an hour of their very busy lives and their money, right, to a session that they're not going to participate in on some level.
Yeah.
So, the resistance might be of a couple in a couple set or a child, but if it's an adult and they're just there, and I've had some where the courts are making them be there, they're not engaged.
Yeah.
And that can be, you say what can be frustrating it's those spaces, right, where people, you don't want to.
You brought up a point too, as you went through it's no longer confidential in some of these CPS cases. That's a different place. I even if it's not like admitting things that are criminally liable, maybe I don't want to admit my uncle touched me, or I struggle with weird porn, or I struggle with drugs. I don't want to tell you that because I don't want that getting back to the court and everybody I know and love.
Yeah.
And if that's not sacred, all of a sudden the process breaks down. You can hear, again, not pretending to hide my agenda here, but I think it should be looked at in a different place. The main struggle I've had, and something I've had 2 of my last cases at CPS, is they'll go to therapy, they will participate actively, they will work on themselves, and then you'll ask the therapist and the caseworker, all right, well, why aren't you giving the kids back? Well, they didn't meet the goals of therapy. What did they meet? Well, they didn't admit or they diminished the injury to the child they caused. And I'm just like, okay. Just want you to hear yourself say what you just said. They might be criminally liable, might not right now. One of the grounds for termination is they did commit that act. You can't prove it. So because they're not helping you prove it in their therapy, like they don't meet their goals, you don't know they did it. And I know this is very defense attorney. This is very, I had a very nice lady named Laura Wingate Hernandez come on last week, who she's a private attorney, but she does a lot of work with kids in there. And she's a very different perspective, and I wanted to give her the grace and opportunity to share that. Kids first, at all costs. I don't share that perspective. I'm far more scared of the department and overreach, and that's fair disagreement. But I struggle with basically saying that you're not activating the therapy because you're denying the act that's brought you there in the first place. I will give you the floor.
Again, without individualizing it, I can definitely sign up for more of a check for these spaces met, and did the therapist find the work there. I want to say that you engaged in whatever those goals were, that you engaged the process. But as far as the court having a set of goals met, and that be divulging a certain space, that's definitely questionable as it relates to abuse, or especially spousal abuse or children. I get a little protective in that space too. What constitutes it? One, and then 2, is the parent minimizing according to, we all have our screenings. If I worked for the government, I would have to go by theirs, but I have my own, right, criterion of maybe we could try a different parenting tool versus actual abuse. But if it is actual abuse, if you aren't even willing to say, hey, maybe that got a little intense and we can try a different route because what was working is no longer, or it never was working, and are you willing to, hey, now that we're here, let's just kind of land on the side of we want to try things differently moving forward. And if you're not working through that space of door, that's where my heart goes, is to those children.
That's fair. My struggle is like one of the ones I have now. Child was at the pediatrician a week before. There were no injuries. That they weren't readily apparent on the child when they was taken. Now they appear, and the parent's like, I didn't do anything. And now it's like, you're minimizing the abuse. You haven't established the abuse.
Yeah.
That's the disconnect. So if you've got it established, that's one thing, and you're minimizing. I understand completely. If you haven't and you can't prove it, and you need my client to do it, and I'm like, no. You're cart before horse on my end. I would be interested in your kind of what I wrote was overall thoughts when a person dealing with mental health, when they should lose parental rights. I have my own, but I'd like to hear, you're a professional in this space.
Again, very individualized.
Yes.
Right? And then, so the space where, my little stint that I had with CPS and where I am now probably hasn't changed as much in the sense of I was tasked to do the reuniting. By the time they got to me as a case, they were already state custody. So you're looking at this whole caseload of children whose parents have to do their year plan to get their children back. And really getting dinged for it. Like, Rachelle, you were at these jails talking to these parents. You care a little bit too much. I'm like, go be a therapist.
Yes.
Noted. I will go be a therapist, right? And the kids love you. I'm like, go be a teacher. I did that too, right? So I'm on the space of integration and of love and that being the cure and knowing how weighed down the system is to as soon as possible get them back into the homes of their parents, because that's probably going to be what's best for everyone.
Yeah. What, horribly abusive or not, what effect does it have on kids when their parents are out of their lives and terminated?
No, it's definitely very different, right? For everybody, but that's a lot of amazing foster parents.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, but I guess my question's geared towards you lose your parent out of your life forever. I would have to believe, I'm asking, there's an impact there.
Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean,
yeah, you're on the couch just because my wonderful parents who adopted me are not my mom who left me when I was 2, and I want her back.
Yeah.
Right? And the parents, what am I going to do with this? I thought I'm, giving back.
what I'm advocating for is termination doesn't always have to happen. You can keep people as possessor conservators and in their lives and continue to work and providing opportunities and services. Like we said, therapy is not a 1-year, quick associate's degree. It's not going to work that way for a lot of people. It's the same as addiction. And someone who's been through it, as my long-winded point was, I got better. I got recovery. Will my kids be better off because they were stripped from me right then?
Come on.
No. And there's just such an arrogance and a bureaucracy to the system that I just really fight against. And it doesn't help some obvious, I hate to sound overly whatever, but, a lot of my colleagues look like me, and a lot of the people that are in the system don't. A lot of my colleagues, you had the chance to go to law school. Doesn't mean you didn't work. Doesn't mean you didn't work hard. But if you think you went to law school purely on your ethic and didn't have advantages in life that other people didn't, you are kidding yourself. And these other people were born into homes of systemic poverty, systemic drug abuse, systemic domestic abuse, and you're going to just get over it. Just don't do drugs. Just say no. Just go to help. Just get therapy. They're in a cultural place you don't comprehend. Maybe pace it a little bit. There's a superiority that I struggle with some of the caseworkers, the DAs. Now, again, they save lives. They do good work. They do. That doesn't mean they can't be better, and someone's got to stand in the way, and that's my job right now. That's fine. We had a few more questions of therapy and family law, and I will let you go because I know you've been here a while, so thank you. The question is, when someone's in the middle of a custody or CPS case, why is therapy so important? I don't want that answered in the requirement aspect, but if you're in a custody dispute, therapy for kid, therapy for mom or dad, why is it important when you're in that process?
That's a good question. I'm just set on the school of thought that, again, therapy for everyone, especially therapists. So anytime's a great time, and especially when there's a lot of life transitioning happening and a lot of children begin to become protective of their family, protective of their parents, not wanting them to feel any more than what they're feeling in terms of sad or angry. So a child might be too close to you to begin talking about what it is they're going through. So it would be helpful to have another person who they can be real with how they feel, right? When as it relates to their own parents or the say opposing parent, right? But
Sure.
everyone in the family, and to not have to protect their parents' feelings and while they're unpacking their own space.
What's your advice for people who do get ordered to therapy, forced into therapy by court order? What would you tell them?
Yeah, let's say it is what you make of it.
Fair.
Again, because I believe therapy for everybody, why not, if you're going to go, make it useful space of your time? A lot of those therapists are going to, again, as a field, be respectful of those spaces, but they have to make a judgment if they're in that space of if their call is going to keep that child safe.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's any doubt, they may err on the side of, not integrating because that was their call on their watch, which is why I'd rather stay on the clinical, right? So we can do the work and not have to worry about a legal verdict coming, right? That either disrupts or is disingenuine to where they really are in therapy.
I like this question. How can lawyers and therapists work together for better client outcomes? Don't subpoena me, please.
So that's a great question. I would say networking, like having more conversations like this, knowing, being able to identify those therapists who it is their niche or their specialization to go into those spaces, one, and then two, we have our list too, right, of the good ones out there that are really on the side of the family and not raking in dollars by keeping it drawn out. And things like that.
I wouldn't have understood it till I went through the divorce and then after the divorce and honestly fallen in love again and everything that's gone with it. But, today, almost to a client, I'm like, if you're not in some kind of therapeutic process, I would urge you to do it, because especially in divorces or long-term separations, your life just is fundamentally different. You will see your kids half the time now. I don't care if you're custodial or not. You will have long periods without your kids. The person who warmed the other side of your bed is not there anymore, whether it was hostile, whether y'all were intimate, doesn't matter. That your life is very different. You're going to go into a dating scene that you haven't been a part of for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and it will be awkward and weird and scary, sometimes unsafe, and just, I think a check with reality, because you just said it. My job's weird because at the end of the day, I work for a client, and, they're to a degree to their wishes, but also their best interest. And the best version of my advice often is use me less and find a way to settle this and move on.
Wow.
Because especially in a family case, right?
Yeah.
The less, the better. The less tension, the less conflict, the better it is for your kids, the better it is for your mental health. And then sometimes that's not true. Sometimes there's just the other side. It doesn't work that way, or there's too many dollars at stake in a divorce or an estate, or I have a role to play, or the other person is just so unreasonable and the kids are in a bad situation. That's all fair. But when you have two people in the realm of reasonable, most of these things should settle, and you should settle with relative, you should be transparent with the finances, transparent with the things we need to do so we can get the thing done. There are mediations that happen where we settle 80% of it, but we take a few issues to a judge. Well, that's a decent result, right? Okay, well, we got the big stuff out of the way, and then I try. And but there's two issues we got to take. Well, at least we didn't spend 3 days in a courtroom going to war. We figured out the kid schedules.
Yes.
So that's it. But I think
Yes.
an acknowledgement of what the clients are going through when they see me. Also the probate side, like, it's not that pleasant to bury a loved one. It's you dealt with it with your husband of all people, most of my parents or siblings. And I think of the conflict that comes in divorces, custody cases, or in probate matters where kids are fighting over mom and dad's estate or the guardianship stuff. Like, if you guys were healthier mentally yourselves, we probably avoid a lot of this conflict. It would make you be a little honest. That's on my end of that, but that's not always good for money. So it's good. She writes, "What do you wish every parent in a CPS case understood about emotional healing?" I'm going to apply that to kids. Let me phrase the question. What do you wish every parent in a CPS case understood about the emotional impact they have on their kids, their behavior has on their kids?
How much time you got? I mean, that's a big one. Unfortunately, we have had to go through this. We've seen it. It matters what you say in front of your kid, whether you think it does or not, it does.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember it 10 years down the road and be like, man, I remember when Dad was angry at Mom and he said this. And, I mean, it affects your kids. There is no way that it doesn't. It absolutely does. You have to be the grown-up. And if that means suppress some of your feelings until you're by yourself and then let it out, do that. But there's no way this doesn't affect your kids. It always will. It always has. Be happy around them. Talk good about the other parent around them. Bring up old memories if you can. I wouldn't mind if you did that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I see the happiness in my kids when I'm like, oh, well, you get that from Daddy.
Yeah.
Or do you remember when you and Daddy went and fishing, or, whatever. So
Little humans that you're responsible for, and the level of authenticity that it takes sometimes as a parent to be who they truly are and to say, I'm feeling this, and this. But to have it, to a degree, maybe sometimes not be shared. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not in their best interest to know how you're feeling right now. Because if they only knew, right? So having the opportunity to be gentle with yourself about where you are. That's why it's great with two-parent households that y'all can know each other and tap out if one person needs to step away. And again, not necessarily in this parenting styles, not one right, wrong necessarily when it comes to the healthy range of it, but how much of conflict resolve are they going to see? Versus, is it talking about their DNA running inside of them, called their parent or significant other, where they might align with you and be like, yep, you're right about it. That person is XYZ, right? But then what is that? How is that being internalized that they're going to have to wrestle with? Don't be X, Y, or Z. Versus, right? These are the areas where I struggle because you were honest. This is the other parent being honest about where they struggle and they're being honest.
Yeah.
And so now offspring, because we know about mental health, now I know what to go and talk to my own therapist about, because I know that this is real and it can really feel like this because my parents are both human, having human struggles, and I am going to have to be my own person to know my own struggles because I got some history now.
Yeah.
That I might be carrying some things. And if we go spiritual to the third generation, that there might be stuff on you and your DNA that you don't even know about, that you're wrestling with. So to have all the information possible within healthy range of what's going to be best for that child to protect their, I want to say their purity of heart when it comes to getting to be a child, versus sometimes situations like divorce can grow people up that, you know what, life isn't perfect and your parents are human, and this is going to be a part of your story, the resiliency on how you're going to be uniquely equipped for the journey that you're uniquely set to walk.
I would just add on the CPS side, like it's hard, and you can hear like my tone for the advocacy. I get very frustrated because I think a lot of parents I don't think get the fullest or fair or the most effort from people to give them a fair shake to keep their kids to get them back. That's an opinion, and I'm sure there are people who are like, they got every opportunity. I'm less interested in that. The reality is a lot of parents lose their kids or lose them in effect by like becoming possessory. But to the parents, I would say the system's not perfect in a lot of ways. I don't care how good at this I am. If you can't find a way now to step up and buck up, and I hate that because I don't feel like that's a place in drug addiction or mental health you really want to use the terms just get better. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you only got a finite amount of time, and I've only got so many legal maneuvers to play, and you might lose your kids or lose them for a very long period of time and regret it. And if it's within you and you're resisting and you don't, this will forever. It's already going to affect them, like y'all have already talked about, but you can lose them forever, and there's not much I can do at a certain level.
Yeah.
So
It's real. It may not be the right system, and a lot of things wrong about the system that I won't go back into, but the space of, because you've got this finite time, you get this opportunity. Because again, I've been on that side of, they're definitely not encouraged to be kind to you while you're in that process.
no, and again, I mean, I'm brutal on it, but you know what? That's my job, and that's my unapologetic version of it. The reality is that only, Miss Hernandez was gracious enough when she said, there's people like you and there's people like me, and so the process won't work, and you don't want a process where there's no pushback. I don't sincerely think it's like broken to the point it's useless. No, there are kids in horrific situations, and every day these CPS workers get them out of that situation, and courts protect them. I understand that.
One of the worst ones for me to even think about is the the Netflix documentary I told you. What is it? Fernandez? Gabriel? Oh, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
She wanted me to use that for the case.
Well, the wrong number one? Is that what you, oh my gosh, that's what I wanted him to use as the re-rack the case. I really wanted to talk about that one with you.
I would have had to watch it, so.
Anyway, no, I think it's Gabriel Hernandez trials. It's on Netflix, it's a documentary, but I was pregnant when I watched it, and I got sick to my stomach, and I convinced myself, I hope this is true. I truly hope this is true of me and my moral compass and where I stand and where I would want to, at all costs, protect that baby. But I convinced myself watching that show that if I was one of his teachers, I'd have snuck that baby boy in my car. And I'd have been like, nope, we're out. Y'all can send me to prison for the rest of my life. That's fine, but he's going to live. And so they have lots of hard cases. They have lots. They deal with traumatic stuff. Sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they get it right.
Well,
it is. It's not what I would want. I'll tell you that.
Well, this ties into the other themes, because it is I would say almost impossible without a high level of maturity and emotional intelligence and self-awareness to not become cynical extremely quickly. So to the religious side, you grow up in that bubble. Everybody, just don't sin. Just be Puritan. It's silly to say, but it's kind of easy to go there because I'm sorry, you didn't have some of the temptations that you're accusing the people of having. It's not as simple, but I get where it comes from. If you're at a CPS court every day and that's all you do, it is easy to become just desensitized and cynical. Same in their criminal justice system. I talked to some DAs that are just wonderful human beings with empathetic and sympathetic hearts that look towards rehabilitation, that still understand victims' impact and are vicious sharks when they need to be, but 90% of the time it's poverty, it's drugs, it's mental health, and they work with it. But the cynicism, I think, is what I fight the most, because when I have clients that are on the edge of cases that did a bad thing or were neglectful or struggling a lot with addiction or mental health, and they are fighting their way back, and they're in my offices sobbing and fighting their way back, but the DA and the caseworker are dealing with them and 10 other cases where the cynicism is justified. Yeah, but you can't look at my clients that way.
Right.
And that's where it is. But I understand where it comes from. The law is written. You get bored and you read the actual chapters in the 200 of the Family Code. It's pro-parent all around. I mean, the meanest part I'll say, and I love my judges, but in every permanency conference, so after the kid's taken and they justify the taking, they do, I think it's 3 permanency conferences. The law says the kids shall be returned if there's not a continuing, clear, and present danger. You know how many permanency conferences have sent a kid back in 13 years? None. That can't be possible. Love you, judges, but if you've never sent a kid back in a permanency conferences, you're not following the law. And I know why you're not. Because you're cynical, not meanly, not in a malicious way, but you're saying better safe than sorry. I don't want the kid to get hurt on my watch. I'd rather break the law to protect the kid. And I know all these people, this is the cynicism, they're not really getting it anyway. Or we had to figure this out. Love you, but the law isn't there for you to make. You got a problem with the law, go to Austin with the legislatures who just made you have the 10 Commandments in your courtroom and whatever. So if I talk to them, talk to them. Yeah, those precious people up there.
Sorry.
Is that time to get Weston?
Yep.
All right.
I gotta go.
I love you.
All right. I love you too.
Thanks for hanging out.
Great to see you. I'll see you this evening.
Yeah, that man's forgiveness and hierarchy of, this infraction versus that set amount of time where, if we were all on that same page even, that Jesus already died for it, right? That I know that you are in a place of repentance.
Yeah.
And you can make amends with man, and you can make amends with God, and they can be separate, and that can be a frustrating, space of consequence.
My place of humility for people is like the AA phrase that my buddy used, and I know he didn't make it up. He says, "Thank God there's no justice." And we're in there. You don't want life to be fair. I promise. 3/5 of the world's kids starve. You don't want life fair. I promise. If you really got all the full consequences, or for me, if I got all the full consequences of every bad thing I ever did, I certainly wouldn't be a lawyer with a full podcast with 4 kids and 2 stepkids and a lovely wife. That wouldn't be my reality. All of us live by grace, and that's not just a faith thing. I agree with the faith element. I promise you live by grace if you were actually humble enough to look at your life objectively. That's me. I'm pretty
That's so good.
adamant
That's
about that.
Bible. That is the Bible.
Right?
And if only we could wake up in a space of humility, being not judgmental, but grateful that that hasn't happened to us yet. And not from at least I'm not this, at least I'm not that sinner's prayer.
Thank God I'm not that. I mean,
Well, thank God you've kept me.
right. Thank God I'm not there, I think is what I meant to say.
And keep me, not make me, not keep me, make me more loving, make me more humble, make me with the eyes to see more like you, Jesus.
I think
Because
that's
because the moment we think we're there, now
it's problematic.
right,
Yeah.
right, now it's a problem. Now you're becoming Pharisaic, looking down on others, right, and thinking that you have arrived to a place that, we all have a sanctification as a process, as a churchy jargon space of truth.
Well, of my favorite gospel stories, that's one of them is the woman at the well, and they're ready to stone her, and you'll know the details better, but my recollection is, I think she had cheated on her husband. I think she was adulterous, and by the law she'd be stoned. She's like, "You're right. So anybody sinless, feel free." That's my jazzed up version. Mm-hmm. And they, if I remember right, they all just drop their rocks and walk off. And that's the point. And that's the part that's hard to understand. The law exists, and you don't have to get preachy. You don't have to get like, we all sin, and we can get into sin nature and sin this. None of us are perfect, and if you think you are, that's where the problem's going to lie. Yeah. Do I think these DAs and CPS workers? No, I don't think that they think they're perfect, but I do think I have encountered a lot of a lack of empathy towards whomever. And
certain people with certain resources can have more grace and leniency than others.
Yeah.
And that's a sad state of, and it's always been, certain degrees of that.
Yeah. I mean, you can say it. There's race and race plays a role.
And money. Now
race and money play a huge role. I mean, it's and if you don't think so, it bears out, unless you believe certain races are predisposed to certain proclivities, which I just choose not to believe. I think it's nurture more than nature. And if we were all brought up in certain places in certain way, we'd all be different ways. And when certain races and economic status have way more issues with poverty, violence, domestic violence, drugs, and prison, it's not hard to see. I think you have to willfully look past it. You have to look something like, that's the problem. Anyway, crazy to me. To a little more positive note, what can therapy do to rebuild trust if the parents did go through a CPS case. Let's give a happier story. Parents have drug issues, kids get taken, parents do their work, kids get reunified. What can the therapeutic process do for the kid and the parent if the kid had to go through foster parent, family home, relative, back to a parent, and go back to a parent who was neglectful or hurtful or abusive?
Therapy can be a great safe zone to start, where a child can hopefully begin to feel seen and heard, and the parent can have a space of continuity where they're meeting in this space throughout the transition of it all, and then be able to rebuild and repair on the other side of all this that the family has gone through.
Yeah. I like it too, because the end of a court case, because I've had ones I win too. Kids go home, but when there's damage done, maybe I'm just good at my job occasionally and it happens, but there's work to be done, and that's where, if you get a chance to have a place to help a transition.
San Antonio is blessed to have lawyers like you.
Thank you. Some days yes, some days no. So. All right, well, let's react the case on there. We can go positive. We'll go to Tiger Talk. Did you watch LSU and A&M at all?
I did not watch, but I did do my homework and tried to get a little updates outside of Facebook updating.
Okay, yeah. So my LSU Tigers were ranked number 20. They hosted number 3 Texas A&M. In my lifetime, LSU's never lost to Texas A&M in Tiger Stadium. That changed last Saturday, up at halftime, and lost horridly. They gave up 35 straight points to open the third quarter into the fourth. I'd go through the game because there's lots of fun stuff, but most importantly, 2 days later, coach was fired. So that's it.
How do you feel about that?
I hate when people, he's not a fit. He didn't get the culture. This should happen. Pause. Makes $10 million a year. He signed up for the social media, the barrage. I'm sorry. If you want to have that platform, you want to make that money, I don't feel sorry for you going through it. You knew what you signed up for. Having said that, on the other side, most of this, it's noise. The guy was a winner at Notre Dame. He was a winner. I can't remember the school before that. But he's won everywhere he's been. He seems to be a decent person. You can't tell from media and stuff, but he seems to be good enough. The kids loved him. He recruited well. I don't think there's a lack of effort or motivation. I think winning at college football is hard. I think winning at a level that provides these kind of trophies is hard. And, do I think LSU's a level up from Notre Dame? Yes and no. I think the SEC's harder scheduled week in to week out. I think that the culture's a little different. You recruit within a little more. The South's a little different. Notre Dame has a different kind of draw, an older draw from that Midwest. And the money's probably similar, I would bet. I bet the booster money's similar. The fans are similar. I wasn't in favor of the noise wanting to fire him through the year when they lost at Ole Miss. They lost by one score to a rival who's still undefeated. When they lost to Vandy, everybody talks crap about Vanderbilt, but they're a one-loss team who's a top 10 team, and they lost by one score on a game Vandy played perfect. And I'm like, well, they had some injuries, and that's football. This game, it felt like the kids quit in the third quarter, and that's not a shot at them. It felt like it got so away from them. They looked so outclassed. You have to blame somebody. If you didn't think you were going to keep him, you've got to save recruiting. You've got to show that the program is an expectation. I don't have a problem firing him, but I don't have an issue with the guy. It's just, there's a weird vitriol, that happens. I was a Saints fan most of my life. We've won one Super Bowl in 2009, and it was fun, but we were called the Aints. And I watched them and cheer for them when they're 2-8 and when they're 8-2. And I want to do the same for LSU. So I'm a little bit I was there in 2003. I had just graduated in 2007. 2019 was one of the most fun years to watch college football in my life. But I also liked every other year in between. It's okay not to win the title every year, so I don't know. Do you watch any of it? No. Do you watch any football?
Not these days.
No? You were a cheerleader there?
I was a cheerleader, high school, college, and I did pro with the WNBA. And
you were a WNBA cheerleader?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
For
San Antonio? Stars. I danced for the Stars.
Did you really?
Yes. And then the AHL Hockey League. When I learned that I could cheer for hockey, that's when I knew I just loved the atmosphere of the sport. Hockey.
Hockey is a fun atmosphere.
Cheering for boxing, or just baseball for the missions. They had a
I didn't
cheer
know
squad
this.
for
Really?
Yeah.
S has to dispel a few stereotypes. I mean, cheerleaders get a stereotype. It's not particularly academic, and that's unfair. Yeah. Also, way more athletic than people understand.
Tell my back that.
Yes, well,
carrying people on
you've got to keep it up.
Yeah.
I go to heavy metal fitness. You should join me occasionally. Any other thoughts you want to give? Closing?
No, this was nice. The mental health, the law, and the healing, and then the spiritual component.
Yeah.
How aligned all these spaces are, more
Yes.
than we give it credit for. And that I got, and this is all God, that I'm able to sit and hold space with all these components at once. It's just,
Well, the same feels for me. So thank you for joining. Where can we find more of you? I know you have a private Facebook page. I don't know if you want people directed there. Where would you like people to find you?
yeah, you can go to Psychology Today.
Okay.
And find me on there. You're welcome to go to my Facebook. Do have a business page on my
Okay.
Facebook, and reach out to me.
We'll link them on the
Wellspring
socials there.
Waters Counseling and Wellness LLC.
Do you have room for more clients if people are interested?
Oh, absolutely.
She said, "Get me
Online, in
paid."
person.
I'm just kidding.
Neighbors to the Spurs right now till they move.
What's your opinion on that?
And I'm gonna no comments.
We're not scared to talk politics
Right,
or
but not the
religion,
Spurs.
but whether the Spurs should have their thing paid for. All right, that's pretty funny. All right, that's it for episode 4 of the Fiegel Files. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned next week because we're sitting on Dr. Justin Reyna, chiropractor, to talk about physical health and wellness, and I think we'll be surprised how much that coincides with the conversation we had here today. Until then, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you need legal help, visit me at divorcelawyersa.com. Follow me on my social media platforms. Stay strong and go LSU 5-3 off a loss Tigers. Thank you so much.